All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media networks, X Zone Radio TV, and our main website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Exonation, my guest this hour is Richard P. Matthews. He's the author of a new book, A Curtain Opens. He's a renowned storyteller, a student of all sacred texts, a spiritual guide to inner peace. He's even a Trekkie, a guide to enlightenment, consciousness, and an awakening planet. The name of his book is A Curtain Opens. And as we all know, Exonation, millions are stirring, longing and searching for the greater meaning in their lives. Now, what they seek, our guest this hour, Richard Matthew, explains, is not intellectual achievement. It is a connection to the great I Am at the very center of their being. This is a quote. Ironically, the animals are now connected and unprotected, he said. While most humans are not, yet animals are trying to help us connect. Joining me now from New Hampshire is Richard P. Matthews. And Richard, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Rob. It's great to be here.
It's great having you here. Tell me, Richard, as a spiritual teacher, what is your reaction to Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now and a New Earth?
It's rather interesting with Eckhart to say that he has hit the mark dead on is an understatement. The only problem that you have with Eckhart is that he is an intellectual, but Eckhart has zeroed in on exactly where we need to be, which is out of our mind, out of our heads, and into our bodies. And he has done this through awareness.
So, do you think that with all the strife and all the misery and all the technological advances and the data that we were being inundated with each and every minute of our waking and non-waking lives these days, that there is hope for this planet and us, the people?
Absolutely. I think that there is a great deal of hope. Mankind has to wake up, and that's part of the process of enlightenment, is to first awaken and realize that what the mind is doing to you and how it is misguiding you, and how your body is actually telling you what to connect with.
What do you think happened? What do you think?
Very interesting phenomenon.
What do you think happened in our lives that we lost this very simple message, yet a message that's so important?
Well, we have gone through a period that began at the beginning of the end of the 19th century, and that was called the Age of Reason. And we were dividing the mind and the body and elevating the mind as if it was the end of all intelligence. And in reality, what we were actually doing is distracting ourselves from what is going on inside our bodies and what is actually happening within our organism and how it is related to the planet and everything else. So we have kind of blinded ourselves in this process and sent ourselves down a false path, which has not been productive.
So in plain English, we're not as smart as we think we are.
Well, we think we're extremely smart, and of course we're we've reached the maximum of our 10% of intelligence, and we want to push that envelope and expand it. But what we don't realize is that the intelligence that actually is greater than us is within us, and we have the capacity to connect with that intelligence that is within us, and to actually relate to the great I am, and listen to what the great I am has for us in the process. And like your program says, the whole theme of your program about taking fact and seeing that it is fiction and that the fiction is really fact is the main point here. It's because the great I am is not fiction. The mind, in what it's telling you, is fiction.
Yeah. All right, stand by, Richard. You and I have to take a commercial break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. X-Zone Nation, Richard P. Matthews is our special guest. He's the author of... Are you ready? Do you have your pencils and paper? Okay, great. A New Curtain Opens. And his website is www.revitalizingministries.com. It's Friday night. I'm sorry about that. Revitalizingministries.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break with our guest this hour, Richard P. Matthews, as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Our special guest this hour is Richard P. Matthews, and he's the author of When a New Curtain Opens. It's available at, Kindle, at Amazon, and CreateSpace. It's also available on his website at www.revitalizingministries.com. What started you on your quest, and what was the inspiration for writing your new book?
What started me happened many years ago, and in making my connection with the great I am, and I was called at that point into a ministry that I really didn't want, but it was one that I finally accepted. But the whole process of making that connection and meditating and using yoga to keep my body fit, that connection introduced me to the great I am that is within us. And from that moment on, once that occurred, and I was only 12 years old when it happened, my whole life changed, and I began to read scriptures and sacred texts, and when I read them, I was able to see things in them that most people would pass over. And in reading those texts, I discovered there was an underlying theme, and that underlying theme is that the great I am is not something that is up in the clouds and the image that we would call God, but the great I am is within us, and He is the essence of our being and the essence of everything on the planet.
All right. So, who is this great I am? Where does He come from? Is He the God of the ancients? Is He the God of today?
He is the source. He is the creator. And to use the term God, and the reason I have shifted to go back to calling it Him the great I am, is that we see God and use the term, and I found myself saying to people, God is not an idea, God is an experience. And yet I was surrounded by theology, I was surrounded by doctrine and dogma, I was surrounded by churches that wanted to control and organizations that wanted to control their people. But in the essence, they weren't touching what He actually is, and He is a real existence inside us. And when you make that connection, He starts to talk to you. his light appears to you, and you feel his presence. You hear him as clearly as you hear your own voice or any voice in a dream. And he tries to lay out for you what his purpose is for your life, and you have a choice. And the interesting thing is what about free will? If there is a great I am telling you and asking you to do something, the irony is you have a choice. You have a choice because you can either do what he asks you to do or you don't. Well, as a human being, you often make that choice not to do what he's asking you to do, and of course you pay the price for it. But in the end, you're making a connection with a force that is telling you and communicating to you as clearly as he was communicating to Moses from the burning bush. And that's where the name, the Great I Am, comes from. In the bush says, Moses says to the bush, what should I call you? Who do I say you are? And he answers, I am Hasha, I am. Now the word Hasha not only comes from the word Haya, but it tells us not only where he is and what he is, it tells us exactly where he is in our inner being, because Aya means essence of being. And as you listen to and read the scriptures, you constantly hear this comment that Moses is saying, God told me this or God told me that. And in that point, the Hebrew people, he was ready to talk to all of them, but they decided they didn't want to listen to him. They would assign Moses to do the job for them.
But it was Moses who spoke to the burning bush. It was Moses who went up and received the 10 Commandments. If God wanted to, or the Great I Am wanted to talk to people, he was given plenty of opportunities. Plus, he's been called Yahweh. He's been called Jehovah. In the Bible. So how do
Elohim.
Yeah. So Elohim. No, Elohim are those who descended from the sky. So I've never heard God referred to as Elohim.
There's a whole section in the Hebrew culture which is focuses on Elohim as the deity, and but the essence that we're talking about is that yes, he is inside us, and he is ready to communicate to every person on the planet. He is already doing this with the animals. And he is already doing this with every other living creature, plants, whatever. But the animals are already connected, and we're the only ones that are lagging behind.
Yeah. In Genesis it says, "And God created us in our image, in His image, in His likeness." To me, that has always proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that we ourselves are God's, because we're in His likeness, we're in His image. So we are His creations, and if we are His creations, then we are He.
The interesting thing in what you say, Rob, is that, and this is of course part of the story of A New Curtain Opens, and when you think of ourselves as gods, what you need to learn is that the I am that is inside you, the Great I Am that is inside you, is the God force, is the deity, and is the creator. So that when we make our connection to Him, and of course this is Joshua, and I use the name Joshua because that as the son of the Great I Am, and I use that because in the Aramaic that was his name.
So it wasn't Jesus?
But that's a Greek translation of the Aramaic is Jesus.
Oh, gotcha. So his real name was Joshua.
His real name was Joshua, and it's amazing that Mel Gibson was the first one in modern times to focus on that. But Joseph Berzon, in his book Joshua, does a beautiful job of talking about his life.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that he is trying to tell us constantly. That's the central theme of his message, and he says it over and over and over and over again. I am in you and you are in me. God is in me and God is in you.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that in so many different ways throughout his ministry, and he's desperate to get people to make that connection. And yet, the Hebrew people share with him on the Mount when he feeds 10,000 people with 3 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And then he turns around and he's trying to explain to them this whole fact that the great I am is inside you.
Mm-hmm.
And what do? They walk away.
Yeah.
And
by the way, I owe you an apology. You were right about Elohim. I had my words mixed up. I was thinking Nephilim. So my apologies.
oh, it's okay. My studies have taken me in all of the sacred texts, and I've worked with Zoroastrianism, from everything from Zoroastrianism to everything that's happening today.
So why are we in such a confused state about the Bible and about what really happened? Why does it have to be so glorious? Why can't it be the real way it was?
The problem with Scripture and any Scripture, and all of them actually, is they're trying to communicate something that people aren't really ready to step aside and do.
Okay.
But ask yourself this question.
Sure.
You got to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
And every religious culture that has developed on the planet, and you see a smattering of that in A New Curtain Opens, when the book discusses this. But it all goes back to creation. And if you stop and realize that the creation story exists in every one of the faiths throughout the world, every one of them, and they're all trying to describe the same basic thing. They're trying to describe man's relationship, and when I say man, I'm using the generic term,
course.
Men and women.
Yeah.
That they're trying to describe the relation with the great I am. And the interesting thing here is, right in the Judeo-Christian texts, you have the story focusing on Adam and Eve and the temptation of the serpent. Now, it's rather interesting. What does the serpent give Eve, who then gives it to Adam? And the tree from which the apple is taken is called the tree of truth and knowledge. Isn't that interesting? Now, if I say to you, what is original sin? Well, it was the eating of the apple. Wait a minute. It's not just the eating of the apple. What was it that the serpent gave you? The serpent gave you 10% of your mind and tried to feed you a line of baloney that he was giving you the whole thing. And actually, the other thing that he gave you was the ego. So now you've got only 10% of your mind that is actually functioning, and an ego which is trying to drive everything, and it spends all of its time trying to convince you that it is right and the rest is not.
Well, you know what? We have to take a commercial break here. We have to take a commercial break. Please stand by. And I don't know if we can I don't know if we can really blame a snake for the way mankind turned out. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
This is Elizabeth Joyce with Stargazing week of September 15th through the 21st.
This week brings abundant social opportunities and you feel a bit talkative. Talk to a wide variety of people, but don't believe everything you hear. It is a good time to explore numerous ideas, projects, and philosophies, but know that not all of them will come down to earth for you. There isn't much to say about this week except that it will be pleasant. Expect invitations, travel, and meeting new people. With this overflow of advantageous energy, the week invites you to set your intentions on hope and satisfaction. Every day energy has been low recently, and your feeling is that it's been hard to know how to focus where your attention should be. With Mars entering Sagittarius, clarity comes. You are in a take-charge mode, ready to take on a challenge, and willing to put yourself out in order to get what you want. This is a powerful time for attracting romance and creative attention. There may be some competitive feelings between you and a significant other now. Focus on reconciliation, forming or cementing bonds, diplomacy, consultation, one-on-one interactions, and negotiations. You may feel a little drained physically temporarily. Belief that you have been uncertain about suddenly become clear at the end of the week. Friendships may be intense, but instead of brooding over problems, you're motivated to make important changes that bring you closer to resolution on long-standing problems. Remember, conflicts are not set in stone, and most easily can be resolved with just a change of attitude. When it comes to income, you're challenged to think outside the box in order to come up with viable plans to improve your finances, and this theme will be with you through the end of the year. Don't limit yourself when it comes to thinking up novel and unique ideas. New technology or methods can really improve your daily life. There may be sudden discoveries or epiphanies that can help you improve your lifestyle, particularly with health and wellness. You may feel a challenge with authority or a desire to break out of financial restrictions this week. Be sure to apply a large dose of common sense to any dreams or schemes, and you could be in for a wild ride and a memorable adventure. If you don't, you're going to be kicking yourself all the way through October. A Leo moon on the weekend has you wanting to spend time in social situations where you can open your heart without concern. It's a warm and generous time. Sunday night, the night before the fall equinox, is a kind of an odd time. The moon moves into Virgo late in the evening, which supports service, simplicity, and accomplishing your list of tasks. At the same time, Neptune is busy, especially in the evening, and that is a space-out and daydream kind of energy. So part of you wants to work and part of you can't get it together. Watch a movie Sunday evening. That's a Neptune activity. Enjoy.
And for more information on Elizabeth Joyce, or if you'd like to contact Elizabeth for a one-on-one consultation, her website is www.new-visions.com. That's www.new-visions.com. My guest this hour, Exonation, is Richard P. Matthews. He's the author of A New Curtain Opens. It's available at www.revitalizingministries.com. Richard, how can we really blame a snake so many years ago for the way we've ended up today? Isn't that just passing the buck?
Well, it's more than just passing the buck. And, I mean, it's not just the snake, it's the woman. And it's like any story. You try to find something that you can use to fold the story around in order to make the story work. But you have to look at what is behind the message. And of course, in the Judeo-Christian culture, it happens to be the snake that is the symbol of all of this. And when I was a young boy, I used to collect snakes and study them, and was very interested in reptiles in general. And they're another creature, just like any other animal or any other being on this planet, and they are not the culprit. The culprit is our rational mind, and you have to realize that that when that story gets told, they're trying to say what the rational mind is and what it is doing, and it is basically fooling you. And it is doing that every day, and as long as you stay in your head and you don't try to relate to your body and connect with the great I Am who is within you, as I lay out in A New Curtain Opens. So the snake is not the snake is not the enemy here. What is the enemy? And we try notice that our mind has taken us away from that, so that we talk about a snake instead of talking about our mind, and yet our mind is the culprit.
Well,
our ego is the culprit.
Well, shouldn't the Creator also take some of the blame here for not allowing us to know the truth, that we had to go another way to find out what the truth really was? Wasn't he suppressing or trying to suppress our very evolution?
No, that's a rather interesting question, Rob, and it's not a matter of his suppression, because he hasn't. What he's done is he's laid it there for us, and we have been allowed to make the choice to connect or not connect with him.
But when we made the choice to eat the metaphoric fruit of knowledge, he kicked us out of the Garden of Eden.
That's an interesting concept. If you read carefully the story of the Garden of Eden, he didn't throw us out. We basically threw ourselves out.
Why? Because we disobeyed him?
Well, because we decided that we were going to go off and discover all of this knowledge and all of this stuff that we thought we were going to gain, and be as smart as God. And in essence, we didn't do that. We went off, and the minute we got outside of Eden, we were in a world that was not very friendly.
But why not? If God created the world, why? See, the entire Bible makes no sense at times. Because, number one, if God makes us in his image, in his likeness, then we are he and he is us. We're one. I agree with you 100% there. The story of Adam and Eve and all the stories in the Bible, to me, are metaphors. Because you had events that had happened that the people who wrote the Bible had no idea on what science was, what biology was, physics. They had no way explaining the reason the sun came up in the morning. They had to create a lot. So when we look at the book of Genesis, it's the beginning. That's the beginning. The circumstances, the chain of events, the timeline makes no sense. When you look at the historical archives, when you look at the scientific and anthropological and archaeological data, what is in the Bible makes no sense. We know for a fact that Noah did not take 2 of every animal on board an ark, because how did the penguins get to Noah from Antarctica? How did the polar bears get to him? And then you've got the story of Cain and Abel, where one brother kills the other. God puts the mark on his forehead to let everyone know what he had done. Well, wait a sec there. So far, according to the Bible, there's Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. One of the brothers is dead. There's 3 people on the planet. But what does the Bible say in the verses that follow? And he crossed the desert, he crossed the mountains to a town where he laid with his wife. Where the hell did she come from?
Yes.
You see, the math doesn't work. Throughout the Bible, the math does not work. We know Christ wasn't born on December the 25th, and yet we still celebrate his birthday. So who is fooling who here? And if you've got a creator who goes out and decides to create mankind in his image and his likeness, he likes being called Father, I'll tell you something. If he was a father in today's society, he'd be in court so fast and probably in jail for what he's done to his kids. How many Egyptians has he killed? How many people in Sodom and Gomorrah were killed? At his hand, at his order, at his instructions. The God of the Old Testament is totally different from the God of the New Testament. We don't know what happened at the Council of Nicaea, what was taken out or for what reason. We don't know what the Bible really was like because of all the editing. It's a story. And I think in today's society, there's too much emphasis put on this story. And it's also the greatest scapegoat that man has ever created for himself. because if things go wrong, God, why have you forsaken me? Or the devil made me do it, instead of mankind taking responsibility and saying, hey, you know what? I screwed up. I'm not going to put my head in the sand and blame God or blame the devil. I'm going to say, hey, I screwed up. I'm going to be man enough to stand up and solve and take care of the situation. If I screw up, I admit it. I made a mistake with you the couple of, in the previous segment, and I stood up and said, hey, you know what? I owe you an apology. I was wrong. I didn't say, well, the devil made me say it, or, God, why did you make me say that? Hey, that was my mistake. I made it. So why?
Right.
So when you're looking at God with the Garden of Eden, Cain and Abel, and then there's Seth, and what about Lilith? Nobody talks about Lilith, the first creation, who married the devil, the snake. There's so much that is missed. There are so many interpretations. There are so many gods. There are so many deities. And then we wonder why people are so confused about religion, why so many people are confused about the different religious philosophies. My good Lord, if you want to take a good look at things, if you take the Greek mythology, it is exactly, in my opinion, what the Bible is fashioned after. You have Zeus, the king on high in Christianity, and in the Bible you've got God. Then Zeus has a mortal son. So does our God. Then you have all these miracles, and it mimics. So which is real? What is real? Who do you believe? Or has the human race been victimized by being the largest mass community that has ever been the victim of a perpetrated hoax caused by religious philosophies?
When you look at what you've said, and actually about 99% of what you said is absolutely dead on true, and there's no reading of any scripture in any religion where you're not going to find the same thing happening in the stories. Mm-hmm. And basically they're describing the human condition, and they're describing what's going on, that hatred and violence and death and destruction. And oftentimes the great I Am gets blamed for these, when in reality the atrocities that were committed by David were committed by David. They did not have any sanction from the great I Am within him. And most of what you're saying is absolutely true, and it's taken up, and a new curtain opens in another story that helps you to try and sort out, fact from fiction, and what we find is fiction is really what we call intelligence, and what is actually fact is what we have been calling fiction. And because the great I Am is an entity that lives within each of us. And when we make that connection and make it honestly, then we can do things and function in a way that is in harmony with our planet and everything else. Now, the odd thing is that is in the New Curtain Opens, is the animals are making this connection, and we are not. And we have not. We have got caught up in our stories. We have got caught up in our in this quote mythology around what is in our heads.
So how do we know
we're being told to do this by our minds?
So how do we know the animals have actually caught on to this?
I don't know if you have a dog or a
pet. Sure, I do. I've got 3 dogs.
At home.
Yeah.
Okay. When you walk into the door after having been gone for a day's work, or having been gone for several days and then finally come home, that dog will jump, dance. I call it the welcome dance. That dog will actually throw himself on you, want to lick you and greet you and dance around you, and
They're happy to see you.
And yeah, they're more than happy.
Okay.
And when that dog makes that connection with you, that dog is relating to who you are and knows who you are.
Well, to
they
me,
have
it's
studied
to me
your
it's
body movement. They have studied everything about you, and they are 100% connected to you.
Sure, because they've got to go to the washroom.
100%.
Sure, because they want to go to the washroom and they want to get fed.
Well, more than that, they want to be loved in return.
But they are. But I'm still trying to understand what this has to do with with the animals. Understanding the connection that you're trying to tell me that we humans don't have.
The animals are connected with who. Let's go to let's take the animal in terms of their connection with the great I am and the love that exists with the great I am. I use a story that I went to the dog show this past weekend, and it was a rather interesting experience. It was an international dog show. Several hundred dogs are there, and those dogs are all over the place in different ways, being judged and whatnot.
All right, Exo Nation, we've got to go to our commercial break here. We'll be back with Richard P. Matthews on the other side of this commercial break. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. My guest this hour is Richard P. Matthews. He's the author of A New Curtain Opens. It's available at www.revitalizingministries.com, and it's also available on Kindle, at Amazon, and CreateSpace. Once again, his website is www.revitalizingministries.com. And Richard, please tell us about the dog show you were at.
At that dog show, there were hundreds of dogs being exhibited from all over the world, and it's a very interesting proposition. Mm-hmm. And as you're walking around the show with your dog and you meet other people, the dogs are meeting each other as well. Mm-hmm. And in the course of an entire day that began at 8 o'clock in the morning and went to almost 8 o'clock at night, the show is going on, and the most you would see is a few dogs would start to bark or to make themselves recognized by another dog, and they are sniffing each other and everything. But in the bottom line here is, in all of that day, not one dog got involved in a fight. Not one got involved in a fight. And those dogs managed to create a situation in which the humans who are there, they didn't get involved in any arguments or fights either. Now, you can't have a soccer game where you go on for a few hours of a game and not have conflict take place. So the animals, because of their connection, they're ready to make the peace. They're ready to cut out the violence. They're ready to make everything work.
Well, if that is the case,
If that is
the case, why are there cockfights? Why are there dog fights? If that is the case, whether the event, if the event is caused by a human or not, the animals would have the intelligence and the oneness not to participate,
or to die in the process.
There you go.
And what we do as human beings, the atrocities that we commit with our animals or with animals, and make them do, it's just mind-boggling.
Well, sure, but look what
our human mind can be that corrupt.
Well, look what we do to each other. We don't have to give animals for examples. Look what we do to our children. Look what we do to each other.
Yes. Yes.
we need a good swift kick in the butt as a race. And when you look at it all, the majority of all wars and all conflicts on this planet, and the most people who have died on this planet, have died in the name of their own religious beliefs.
That's correct.
So who do we blame for wars? There you go.
Human beings.
Terrorism.
And
Terrorism.
Our rational minds and our egos.
You see, terrorism, for example, isn't a fight against I'm right, you're wrong. It's a fight about my God says this, your God says that. My prophet says this,
correct.
Your prophet says that. So I believe it's time that we eradicate religion, period. Get rid of it. We don't need it anymore. We're not sheep anymore. Get rid of our religion. Start learning to respect each other, and the world, in my opinion, will be a better place.
And that's probably, you described in a nutshell, the theme of A New Curtain Opens, because that's exactly what it's talking about.
I hate to do this, Richard.
Led us astray.
Richard, you have been a great guest. I want to thank you so much. We've got to say so long for tonight. www.revitalizingministries.com. My name is Rob McConnell. Have a nice weekend, everybody. Be safe and always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone.